To front page politics, and new today, a bold prediction from House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Today, the Democratic Congresswoman says the pick of Paul Ryan on the Republican ticket makes it easier for the Democrats to take back control of the House. He hasn't visited the state since February, but President Obama is adding a stop in Wisconsin to his schedule. He heads to Milwaukee next Saturday. The president won that state in 2008 by 14. New today, Mitt Romney has called off a scheduled event this afternoon in the battleground state of Colorado due to an unrelated incident at the Pueblo airport. And the Romney camp says the former U.S. Solicitor General under President George W. Bush will serve as the debate partner for Paul Ryan. Ted Olson has argued 58 cases before the Supreme Court. Joining me now for more front page politics staff writer for Roll Call Shira Toeplitz and national political reporter for the Washington Post, Amy Gardner. I'm glad to have you both here, and I'll begin with you, Shira, as we learn some new details about how big the automatic budget cuts could be as the so-called fiscal cliff approaches. So here's what Nancy Pelosi is saying about it. Let's listen.
President, as recently as yesterday, I received a call from him saying we really do have to have an agreement, which I fully agree with, and we must have as much, do everything we can to find common ground.
Now, Mitt Romney said in his weekly podcast that the president is, quote, passively allowing us to go over a fiscal cliff. Shira, is there going to be an agreement before the January 2nd deadline?
Highly unlikely, Alex, and here's why. Let's take a look at the congressional calendar over the next couple weeks. They're coming back to town for just a couple days next week, and then they are out until the election, and then we have the lame duck session, right? So despite the fact that nobody in Washington wants these cuts to go through, not on K Street, not the White House, not House or Republican or Democratic senators, it's looking more and more likely that these are going to happen unless they can get something together in the lame duck, which is already jam-packed with a laundry list of legislative items to deal with.
So let's get with the details here, Amy, with you, because we're talking about a 9.4% cut in defense programs, an 8.2% cut in domestic programs. Right. If no agreement is reached in time, who's going to get the blame? Will it be Democrats or Republicans? Or would both sides be blamed equally? I mean, who has more at stake?
Well, as Shira said, no one wants this to happen, and in fact, these odious cuts were put into this agreement in order to keep everybody at the table to come to a bigger deal to avoid these cuts. We're seeing the Republicans try to blame President Obama for the looming defense portion of these cuts, but we saw on Friday the release of a report from the Office of Management and Budget showing how deep the cuts would be in some of the domestic spending areas as well, and so that's, I think, fair to interpret as an attempt by the White House to push back against this. So everybody's going to try to blame everybody else, but the fact is nobody wants this, and I think it's also important to note that with Congress's approval ratings far lower than President Obama's, I don't think it would be accurate to suggest that the House Republicans have an advantage when it comes to public opinion on this issue.
Let's look at the latest NBC News battleground states, and it's a map which shows the president with an overall advantage at this point, Shira, but there are still a handful of crucial battleground states. Mitt Romney would essentially have to win most of them to win the White House. So, Shira, how high is the bar right now for Governor Romney at this point?
You know, it seems with every passing week, the road to the White House, this electoral math that you're showing becomes more and more difficult for Governor Romney. I mean, the real heartbreaker there for Boston must be Ohio. The latest NBC poll shows the president almost approaching 50% there with a 7-point lead. I mean, no Republican in modern history has ever won the White House without winning the Buckeye State. That's a really tough one. Without Ohio, if it's even conceivable, they would have to run the table and win almost every other battleground state to have a chance in November 6th.
So what's the sense you're getting, Amy, from both camps about how these electoral numbers are stacking up?
Well, I think both sides are conceding that some of the bump that we're seeing in some of these swing state polls that came out over the past week reflect a post-Democratic convention bounce that gave President Obama an advantage that may or may not last. The Romney camp says this election is still going to be all about the economy, and the economy is still struggling, and it just doesn't make any sense to them that President Obama can win a second term under these economic circumstances. His trick, of course, is to keep the conversation on the economy at a time when, of course, we're all talking about some foreign policy issues that he hasn't been viewed as handling all that well. I think that the Obama side, too, is warily eyeing these new polls. They expect things to level out again, too, and they're not claiming victory just as much as the Romney side is not throwing in the towel.
Another swing state I want to keep with you, Amy, on this Colorado. It's one that the president won in 2008. Right now we have a poll showing that the president leads in that state by just 1 point. And in your latest article, you write about how the president is reaching out to Colorado's middle-class voters. Give me a sense of your situation, of the situation there.
Sure. Well, I think what Colorado boils down to, a fact that's true in some other swing states, is the suburbs. There are two suburbs of Denver, Arapahoe and Jefferson counties, that have boomed in recent years, and they've attracted a whole new and different population of unaffiliated voters, Latinos, and among the unaffiliated, interestingly, it is the women voters who are more likely to swing between the parties. Men who call themselves independent are actually typically harder to move over to the D column than women, and that explains President Obama's emphasis on issues that they deem as important to women: contraception, women's health issues, abortion, and so on. And you can see that in the messages that he is delivering in campaign commercials and mail pieces, and the fact that he actually visited Jefferson County. He had a rally in Golden, Colorado on Thursday where he talked a lot about these issues as well. Yeah,
and the same question to you, Shira, relative to Iowa, a state that the president won last go around. He's got a slight edge right now. What's your sense of things there?
It's the true essence of the word battleground. You look at polls, and they're all within the margin of error. You look at the airwaves in Iowa, and they've just been bombarded with presidential campaign ads. I spoke to a Republican consultant this week for that story who said it costs just as much to air an ad in Sioux City this week as it does in St. Louis, which is obviously a much bigger market. That's how much the state is being inundated. But also, let's remember that it's only 6 electoral votes in Iowa. It's not a must-win necessarily. Sure, it would help Governor Romney in particular make some headway on the electoral math, but 6 electoral votes in the scheme of things is not as big a prize as Ohio or Florida.
Of course. All right. Well, Shira Toeplitz, Amy Gardner. Ladies, thank you so much.